the turn of the 15th century, when Europeans first sailed into the crystal-clear waters of the Caribbean, ships' captains are said to have been able to navigate between the islands by listening out for the sounds of swimming turtles. Those days are long gone, but the Caribbean still weaves its special magic. A magic captured through the lens of photographer Dos Winkel on his many travels through the region. Stretching in a giant arc, some 2,000 miles long, from the waters of southern Florida to the north coast of Venezuela, the Caribbean islands boast a diversity found in few places on Earth. A natural diversity born out of the physical differences that exist in the thousands of tiny islands, and a cultural diversity brought about by the region's turbulent colonial past. And there are few better ways to explore these islands than from the decks of a true windjammer, the Stad Amsterdam. Though launched in the year 2000, it combines all the finest traits of the fastest clippers of old. She's a living link with the golden era of sail, when three-masted square riggers ruled the waves, sailing twice as fast as any ship had done before. And the Caribbean's long-standing maritime tradition ensured that many of the great ships' captains and crew came from the surrounding islands. The Caribbean boasts two worlds, one above the water and one beneath it. And Dos takes us on a voyage to discover them both. Having lived and worked in the islands for over 20 years, he gives us a rare insider's look at the nature and culture of two of these contrasting tropical worlds, and discovers how they're coping with development. In Bonaire, an island renowned for its pioneering role in marine conservation, Dos explores the mysterious world of the mangroves and dives the wreck of a three-masted clipper which lies almost perfectly preserved in deep water and is a virtual twin of the Stad Amsterdam. But Dos's first port of call lies 600 miles to the north, on the island of Saba, an extinct volcano just 5 miles square with a landscape that is as dramatic underwater as it is above. Saba's lush green slopes appear to rise straight out of the sea, and at over 2,600 feet, its central peak is almost permanently decked in cloud.
Believe it or not, but for more than 250 years, this rough coast has been the only connection for the Sabans between the sea and our village up there, which is called the bottom, funny enough. But to reach the bottom, you have to go all the way up a very steep path, which they call the ladder.
There are many theories as to the origin of the name Saba. One of them being that it comes from the old Arawak Indian word Siba, meaning rock.
This is really steep.
Once owned by Spain, France and Great Britain, the island is now an overseas territory of the Netherlands.
Hi, Will.
Hey, Dos, welcome to Saba.
Good to see you again. Quite a climb, eh?
It's indeed quite a climb. This is what our ancestors had to do for a living, to bring all the cargo and so for the whole island from the ladder bay. Some even pianos, and the bishop and the governor general, you had to bring him up in a rocking chair with 2 sticks on the side, and then 4 men, 2 in front, 2 behind.
That's funny.
And they would bring them up to the bottom, yes.
Yeah, incredible. Well, huh?
I should invite
still
you.
A long way.
Yes, still a long way.
Are you going to carry me?
I can't do like my
The
grandfather.
Caribbean, or the West Indies as it's also known, bore the full brunt of the curse of slavery. Saba, however, appears to have escaped the very worst of it.
Well, Saba was not settled as a plantation island. As you can see from the geography, it's just a small mountain volcano rising up out of the sea. It was settled by pirates, mostly from Jamaica and St. Kitts. Well, we went over then from being pirates to being very famous sea captains. And one of them was Mr. Johnson, Captain Ernest Alfred Johnson. I have collected...
Ernest Johnson is perhaps one of Saba's best-known sea captains. He was born in 1884 and most of the trade between the islands was carried out by Saban's schooner. His most famous exploit was the heroic rescue of the crew of a US submarine in 1920, for which he was decorated. After a long and eventful life on the high seas, he died on his native island, where he was buried behind his house in the early 1970s. Family graves in the garden are an old tradition on Saba, because of lack of space in the church graveyards. And as there's no piped water on the island, the Sabans collect rain from their roofs and store the water in cavernous cisterns. And although Saba is part of the Dutch Caribbean, almost everybody here speaks English. Saba might be small, but it's full of dramatic contrasts. Its 5 square miles support 6 distinct ecological zones.
It's hard to imagine that we're here in a part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, because around us is a very lush rainforest. And I'm here with Tom van het Hof, my old friend, who lives on the island for more than 17 years and has a tremendous knowledge of the nature on Saba.
Saba's rainforests are a vital and unique habitat for a host of plants and animals, and a critical store of year-round water. The Antillean crested hummingbird is one of 60 species of bird found on the island. One animal found nowhere else is the Saban anole lizard, this one displaying the distinctive leopard spots of the male. And although an import from South Africa, the black-eyed Susan is Saba's national flower.
They look gorgeous at the moment. Bromeliad.
It's not raining.
No, it's not raining.
No.
This is just the clouds.
It's not raining, but it's always dripping because, you know, the moisture here in the clouds is condensating, so it's always dripping.
1611. Tom, I have the feeling that it's not far anymore, huh? We're approaching the summit of Mount Scenery, and that's the place where we can find the elfin forest. I've been there 5 years ago. In the past few years there were 2 hurricanes that have destroyed part of the forest. Now we want to know what's left of it, and I hope to be able to take some nice pictures there.
Saba's cloud forest is unique in the Caribbean, probably on Earth. Nowhere else have giant mahogany trees like these become the dominant species.
Oh, Tom, this is really sad. It's just skeletons. All the leaves are gone, all the epiphytes. Oh my God.
There was a tremendous amount of breakage and, of course, complete defoliation.
Wow.
Not too many trees were actually uprooted, and there's actually very few of those old trees that are surviving at this moment. You know, the trees have probably been shaken and shaken so much by the force of the wind that the root system has been damaged to the extent that they couldn't survive. But fortunately, we're now seeing a lot of seedlings of the mountain mahogany appearing again in the forest. Some of the seedlings are already about 6 feet high, so that's encouraging. They are now recovering, and they're putting out new seedlings and saplings. But it's going to take time.
Yeah, of course.
Lots of time.
But it's still extremely beautiful.
Yeah. It's still magical. This is most likely one of the best spots in the cloud forest of Ceiba here. This is really a spectacular tree. It's not only very old, it's also branched out quite extensively, and it's fully covered with all kinds of epiphytic growth.
Yeah.
But this magical world is threatened now by changing climate. Historically, a hurricane would strike the island once every 150 years. Now it's on average every 3 years. The question is, will the new seedlings be able to handle the battering? Little more than a stone's throw away, at the base of the mountain, a dramatically different world awaits.
We're on the moon, James. Another planet. Here you can see the true volcanic character of Ceiba. This is all lava, shaped by rain, wind and sea. This is one of the most spectacular places on Ceiba, where the ocean and the land meet. Down there are tide pools, and in those tide pools you can do wonderful type of photography, half under and half over.
Each pool is a miniature world in itself and mirrors the life found on the reefs offshore. You find here corals, shellfish and crabs, along with a host of juvenile reef fish that use these protected pools to grow undisturbed by the predators that would normally confront them in the open sea. And it is to Ceiba's offshore world that Dos next takes his camera. The island's coastline, down to a depth of 60 meters, has been under the protection of Ceiba's Marine Park since 1987, when it was established by Tom van 't Hoff. Despite initial resistance from the locals, the park has allowed a modest dive industry to develop without compromising its unique underwater world.
In the beginning, it was clear that the fishermen really didn't understand why they needed a marine park. They felt that they'd always been taking very good care of the resources, didn't overexploit it. So why do we need to protect this? Why do we need rules and legislation, etc.? So we've been trying to explain them that, you know, if they wanted to promote the diving tourism, there would be an influx of tourism, you know, more people, more use, more exploitation, and they really needed to be, you know, prepared and protected from that sort of additional use.
Today the park is run by David Koistra, a marine biologist with a mission to encourage the surrounding islands to follow Ceiba's example.
Tom, have a good dive. David, Sue, Henrik, can I come?
The divers descend slowly into the blue. Their first encounter, a lone shark, which provides Dos with a sensational photo opportunity. Then at 40 meters, out of the depths, rises the top of an underwater mount or pinnacle. The sheer sides are covered in a growth of coral and sponges. An explosion of life in the blue wasteland of the surrounding ocean. Saber's underwater world is as steep and craggy as the island itself. Back in shallower water, a sign of how healthy these seas are. Barrel sponges a meter wide and a field of adult conch shells. An animal that has elsewhere been so heavily fished that it's listed on the CITES endangered species list. Then, to Dos's great delight, a rare encounter with one of the strangest fish in the sea. A short-nosed batfish, an extraordinary bottom dweller that uses its modified fins more for walking than for swimming.
Jeez! That was fantastic, man.
Yeah.
You know that this is the first time I ever saw that
In your whole life.
in my whole life.
Wow. And it was a short-nosed batfish, I think.
Wow, super!
Once the sun goes down, the whole island begins to resonate with a pulsating whistling sound.
I'm here in the rainforest on Seba, surrounded by sounds of tiny creatures. There are no crickets, they're tree frogs, but they're very small. And of course I hope to find them and to be able to photograph them. Here's the tree frog. Yes. Be careful, be careful. Sometimes they take advantage of the light to catch ants. And this tree is the white elder, and that attracts ants, therefore they sit in this tree. Excellent, beautiful.
Saba boasts just one road. Against all advice from engineers overseas, the islanders built it anyway. And today they proudly call it the road that could never be built. The island's rugged terrain and lack of coastal development make it also the last major nesting site for a remarkable seabird, the red-billed tropic bird. For the past 7 years, Mandy McGee has been banding these birds, marking their nest sites and recording every egg and hatchling in what is the only detailed study made of these graceful masters of the air.
Dos, you might want to take a look in the hole. They are beautiful.
I've never seen it so close up.
They look plain white flying, but yet when you look at the detail of the black barring on the back and the black on the wings and the red bill, They're magical. They really
Fantastic.
are. And here, the birds are not on a decline. In our neighboring islands, you will find that all their coastal habitat has been developed, and they no longer have suitable nesting, predator-free nesting holes.
Yeah.
So Saba is an extremely important island for the survival of this species. That's
In February 2002, after 5 years of painstaking work, to Mandy's joy, the first banded chick returned. Since then, more have followed. And through these observations, Mandy has been able to piece together the bird's remarkable life history. After leaving the nest, they go off to sea for 4 to 5 years, remaining airborne all that time except for short rest periods on the ocean surface. The birds then make the long journey back to their original nesting area to mate and lay their eggs.
What did you find?
I found a bird sitting on an egg. I didn't notice whether or not it was banded, but it is on an egg. So we're going to take the bird out. We're going to check to see if it has a leg band. And it isn't that traumatizing, although it will sound like it when I first pull it out.
Okay. Well.
So I would say 314. 314.
314.
And we'll measure its exposed culmen, 61.5 millimeters.
61.5.
Though the whole process causes some stress, among other things, it has allowed Mandy to determine what the bird's favorite food is.
Have the bottom half of, or back half of the flying fish.
He vomited.
No, he regurgitates.
Oh, regurgitate.
And then we're going to paint its head green so that I know which bird it is. I don't have to disturb it for the rest of the nesting season.
With the habitat of the red-billed tropic bird increasingly threatened elsewhere by tourist development, Saba's role as a sanctuary is more important than ever. And this research into the bird's life cycle and needs provides them perhaps with their best hope for survival. Saba's pristine isolation has preserved it from many of the uglier aspects of development. But discussions about the future are as lively as ever. A key issue is whether conservation areas should be set up on the island, which is 95% privately owned.
People on Saba believe that it's not appropriate for any outside interest group to impose a constraint on the development of privately owned land.
What was protected here, it's the Sabans who protected it throughout the centuries. So we don't need other people to protect what is ours. We feel nationalistic as far as that is concerned.
We believe that we are a community organization. We believe we're a part of Saba, and we would only want to participate in a decision with the consent of the community.
We need places on the island that we can make new development, because we have a lot of students that's going abroad to school, and we need to encourage them back to the country. And instead of always getting foreign help and foreign workers, which only takes the money out of the country, we need to encourage our youth to come back.
Of course there will be development, but it needs to be controlled, and it needs to be on the scale that Saba permits. It needs to be low impact, low pace, and small scale development.
One island that's often seen as a model of how development can be harnessed to achieve conservation goals is Bonaire. It lies some 600 miles to the south, just off the coast of Venezuela. As far as Caribbean islands go, Bonaire could not be more different than Saba. Largely flat and desert-like, the island is home to a veritable forest of cacti. Bonaire was not formed by a volcano, but largely by the action of coral. Pushed up slowly over thousands of years, these ancient reefs now form impressive limestone terraces.
This feels like diving the coral reef, actually. These are all corals, a little bit old, about 150,000 years. They're still alive here, all these cacti.
In many places, the limestone has been carved out by wind and water to form caves. And some of these still show signs left by the island's very first inhabitants, the Caiquechos tribe of Arawak Indians. They made the 50-mile crossing from mainland South America over 3,000 years ago. And as far as we know, they lived as a peaceful fishing culture until the arrival of the Spanish in the early 1500s. Little has been passed down to us from their time, but one story tells of a blowhole on the rugged coast nearby, through whose huffing and puffing the Caiquechos are said to have been able to forecast the weather. And the island's austere natural beauty above water is more than matched by the abundance of life found on the fringing reefs that circle the island.
Okay, we go that way. Let's see what we can find. Here, on this coral head of star coral, are many small other creatures. And these worms live in a small calcium tube. They're always twins. That means that you always see the two small Christmas trees together. Now he withdraws himself back into his tube.
Coral reefs have all kinds of different values. They provide employment, they provide food, they provide storm protection. We're taking all kinds of biomedical substances from them that are being used to treat cancers, and I don't know what. I mean, and
the
that's
dive
quite
industry?
Absolutely, that's quite apart from the aesthetic and recreational use that's made of reefs. The prospect of losing 70% of that within our lifetime is shocking, really shocking, and from a conservation perspective, completely unacceptable.
The fact is that today, corals are dying off at a much faster rate than the well-publicized tropical rainforests. And Bonaere's waters have become a rare exception. Recent studies show that they're home to over 300 species of fish, making these reefs among the richest in the world. So-called cleaning stations show wonderfully how reef creatures cooperate with each other for mutual benefit. Here a dainty cleaner shrimp gets itself a meal while ridding a French angelfish of parasites. And not only shrimp, but a number of small fish are also happy to provide the service. Turtles are some of the oldest creatures alive. They were gliding through the warm oceans of the world before the age of the dinosaurs. But now hunting and destruction of their breeding grounds has decimated their numbers. In Bermuda and the Cayman Islands, green turtles like this are already extinct. The reason why an extraordinary array of marine life survives here is that Bonaire, like Saba, has one of the few actively managed marine parks in the world. In fact, this is where the whole idea started.
The Hall of Fame. My mind's eye saw the entire frame.
One person who more than 30 years ago clearly understood the value of Bonaire's underwater riches is Captain Don Stewart.
These mean a lot to me.
And over the years he's received numerous awards for literally changing the way people think about coral reefs. He first stumbled upon this small, virtually unknown island on May the 21st, 1962, at the helm of a two-masted schooner.
The thing is, as we sailed into the island proper, I had never in my life been so excited at any landfill that I'd ever made. The lustrous, the pure clarity, the pristine water that I sailed in was like sailing on pure air. And as you look down, you see all the fish. And my buddy, he was a spear fisherman, and he's looking at all those fish. He was really after those fish. And we set up our first dive station. And from then it was just all go. I'd get a tourist in, and the tourist would say, Don, they said, I understand that you're doing some diving. I said, oh yes. I said, we have a diving facilities here. I had 5 tanks. I said, we have a diving facility here. I said, what would you like to do? And he said, I want to see a grouper about that big. And I said, Jesus, you're a day late. Had you only come yesterday? And then I realized that that man was willing to pay, honest to God, dollars, possibly more than I was selling the fish for, to see that fish. And I said, I like that idea. I have not met anybody who wants to handle a spear gun in the last 10 years. Everybody's a conservationist. That is the important thing.
Captain Don's pioneering efforts opened up a whole new way of looking at marine conservation. Dive tourism was harnessed as a force for good, benefiting the local community and preserving a fragile marine habitat. And some people say, to really appreciate it, you should leave your tanks on the beach and free dive with the fishes.
Catherine even get a nice meeting time with a whale shark.
Here on Bonaire?
Here on Bonaire. And he came right to her.
I don't want to hear it. Stop.
Because you don't like whale shark. I know you prefer the frogfish.
Okay, and you started photography in the meantime?
We published a book a couple of years ago on the shipwrecks of the region, and I picked up photography to do the photos for the book.
And the windjammer is in the book?
Sure, it's in the book. That's really the appeal, for me, that's the appeal of the crown in Bonaire. If you go take picture on the windjammer, you will like it. You would like it?
Yeah.
Well,
so we can prepare something, huh?
Yeah, please.
Okay,
please,
we will like it.
I would love to dive to windjammer. Yeah.
Cool. Just
let's do it. Okay.
Dominique is an underwater illustrator with a long experience of diving wrecks. But this one will need some careful planning.
Going from here 30 feet till 200 feet.
Oh, it's quite a depth.
So we meet together and we swim to the bowsprit, where it's very spectacular to stay here out of the bowsprit.
The depth brings with it the risk of nitrogen narcosis, a toxic effect of high nitrogen pressure on the nerves, which can dangerously disorientate a diver.
So you better stay close to me, because maybe I'm going to do crazy things.
No. I will be. You won't be crazy more than me. We will be the same.
Yeah, but I mean more than you. That won't be possible.
2 drunk divers.
2 drunk divers.
But 2 happy divers too.
It will take a few days to assemble all the equipment and people needed for the dive. But the thought of exploring a piece of island history made it all worthwhile. The town of Rincon, in the north of the island, is a place where Bonaire's history and culture remain still very much alive.
Boy, Can you tell me something about the time of slavery here on Bonaire?
The first list of slaves that date from 1640.
Yeah. And that's for the Dutch then?
For the Dutch, yes.
Yeah. So, and they worked?
They worked
for the Dutch?
For the Dutch, for the Dutch West Indian Company. And they work in the salt plants. They have to walk every Sunday to Salinha, the salt pans.
From Rincon?
From Rincon.
But that's an enormous distance.
That's 30 kilometers.
Wow.
6 hours walking.
Yeah.
And then Saturday they came back to Rincon to see their families. When the sun was too sharp, you know, they didn't work because other way they got blind. Yeah. That was to protect their eyes.
Yeah.
Lucia, mama ta Lucia, antovo tata tagene, mi báculo, bo mama Lucia, con corazón contento, anto suela, lo abri.
The work songs are not the only reminders of Bonaire's repressive past. These tiny huts built around 1850 on the edge of the salt pans housed 2 to 4 slaves each. Today they watch over the largest natural flamingo sanctuary in the Western Hemisphere. Around 7,000 birds can be found on the island at any one time. By the day's end, Rincon is preparing for a party. The music played here is a unique blend of Caribbean styles, but with strong African roots. Papiamento, the local language, also reflects the cultural melting pot of the island, being a wonderful blend of Spanish, Portuguese, Dutch, Arawak Indian and African influences.
So now that it is night and all the normal people are going to party, we are going to party underwater.
The town pier, just off the main promenade, is perhaps an unlikely place to go looking for wildlife. But the pillars, old car tires and other junk lying here act as an artificial reef, attracting all sorts of creatures. Dos and Kelly de Meyer set off on an exploration of one of the most captivating places on Bonaire, the mangrove forests of Lac Bay. After more than a decade as manager of Bonaire's marine park, Kelly now helps other coral reef protected areas around the world to become more effective.
There is a very important interaction between the 3 ecosystems here, huh?
That's right, yes. Because what we have, looking to seaward, we have where the waves are breaking, we have coral reefs. Here we're sitting on top of seagrass beds, and then behind me we have the mangrove ecosystem. So those are three highly interconnected and adjacent ecosystems, and some of that interconnectedness is actually really rather obvious. So for example, we know that this is a nursery ground for juvenile fish. So the fish will spawn on the reef, but the young will come into the seagrass and particularly into the mangroves, which are much more sheltered and where they can hide until they come of a size where they'll then migrate all the way back out onto the reef. But there's interconnectedness there that we're only beginning to understand in terms of things like, for example, nutrient export from the mangrove through the seagrass and out onto the reef, which also appears to be a critical part of that interconnectedness.
But it seems that before we even get a chance to fully understand the value of these mangrove seagrass systems, they're disappearing. They're now in fact considered among the most threatened habitats in the world.
And look, there's the oysters.
Yeah.
This is the first clump of oysters right
Yeah.
there.
So if you look at the bottom here, you see all the Cassiopeia.
I believe that's the only jellyfish that actually lives upside down like that.
Yeah, yeah.
There is not another one that lives on the bottom upside down.
Isn't it peaceful here? The water is pretty clear.
It is very clear.
Look, look, look. Isn't it beautiful?
Slipping into the water, it's as though you enter an enchanted world. A world in which trunkfish appear to be flying through the trees.
Big grey snappers.
Yeah, mangrove snapper.
Mangrove snappers.
Gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Uh-huh.
Right, in the meantime, I'm eaten by mosquitoes. They're
One of the
abundant
challenges of the mangrove environment,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
true. Yeah.
Well. I read that the oxygen that they take in here not only go up, but also go down to the deeper parts of the root.
That's right, yes.
Yeah?
And look at these. You can see the mangrove root here is so densely covered with mangrove oyster, I can scarcely lift it. They're just teeming with life.
Yeah.
And this is, of course, also what's so attractive for the fish.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a larder.
The complex connections between mangroves and reefs was again highlighted by a recent study which showed that over 20 times more fish are found on coral reefs near mangrove forests, showing that protecting mangroves together with reefs is much more effective than just protecting reefs alone. Unlike its ocean cousins, which are usually found in open water, the upside-down jellyfish lives in the shallows near mangroves. As their name suggests, they spend most of their time upside down in the sand, filtering food in the water. Symbiotic algae living in the jellyfish's tentacles give the animal its color and also help it produce its own food. As the tide turns, a current develops, whipping up a storm in the channels. Now the mangrove's role in feeding the offshore reef is actually made visible, as the nutrient-rich sediment built up between the tree roots is sucked out to sea. The day has finally come to dive the Windjammer. The weather conditions look fine. Both the wind and currents on this side of the island are moderate, providing hopefully good visibility underwater. Dominique readies his drawing board so as to be able to make a new sketch of the wreck. And here already a first sign of the mysterious ship. Dominique goes down to tie a mooring line around one of the Clipper's 3 metallic masts, which broke off here on the reef above the drop-off, its base pointing tantalizingly towards the final resting place of the rest of the ship.
I think it's good to plan the dive before. I mean, we plan the time, we plan the depth. So I think we will stay at 54 meters and we plan to stay 15 minutes. So the only problem is to have enough air to do all that stuff.
Yeah. I think we have
and
enough.
we will stay together. You take your photo, I will try to make some draws.
Yeah.
And normally at this watch, after 12 minutes, he will start to make why? Because on narcosis, otherwise we forget everything.
We have to talk.
Okay.
So voilà, okay.
Okay. Let's go.
Fine?
Let's go.
Edos,
Yeah.
I have something very French for you. Before we make this deep dive, bite a good piece of chocolate. Because with the narcosis, we keep that in your mouth for all the dive, and Hendrik too. Because it's good too.
I think I'm on a diet here
Yeah,
or
Catherine.
something. No one
Thank you.
offers me
Catherine.
chocolate.
Here you go.
But the depth will not only make the chocolate taste better,
Yum, 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 yum.
it brings with it what divers
Yeah,
fear the
I'll forget
most,
it now.
the danger of the bends. Lying in 200 feet of water, the wreck is at the very limit of where a diver can safely go using ordinary equipment.
So now, let me check. It's closed.
Each person is carrying an additional air tank.
The part I need is
For though the team plan to spend no more than 12 minutes at maximum depth, it will take them the best part of an hour to reach the surface again. And for extra security, Kathy carries 2 more tanks to be stored under the mooring line at the base of the mast. The descent proper begins from the reef at 10 meters or 30 feet. Initially following the slope of the drop-off, the team descends into the blue. 43 meters or 140 feet. The pressure here is more than 5 times what it is at the surface, forcing extra nitrogen into the blood. Should a diver later ascend too quickly, the gas will boil out, causing paralysis or death, the dreaded bends. Out of the murk, the ghostly shape of the hull looms. Then its true size becomes apparent. The light is deceptive down here. In most seas at this depth, it would be pitch black. But Bonaire's clear waters enshroud the ship in a soft blue light. Dominique reaches the bottom at 60 meters or 200 feet. He takes up position in front of the bowsprit and begins his drawing. One of his pencils floats out into the blue, and Kathy retrieves it for him. Moving into the hull from the bowsprit, the ship's massive starboard anchor lies still fixed by its chain to the winch. Passing through the iron lattice that once supported the main deck, you're faced with the awesome dimensions of the wreck. It's 239 feet long, and it takes a special effort just to get from one end to the other. Gliding between the decks, it's hard not to think back to the ship's glory days in the 1880s, when, like the Cutty Sark, it was one of the fastest sailing ships afloat. But by 1912, the clipper era was all but over, and on a fateful day in December, rusted and leaking, the old ship hit a reef off Bonaire and sank. Meanwhile, Cathy, carefully watching the time, signals to Dos and Dominique inside the hull that it's time to leave. Just a last few moments to appreciate the ship in her final resting place. The depth has protected her from the wind and waves which have lashed the coast above many times in the past 100 years, preserving her intact in her full glory to this day.
So strange when you are down, huh?
Completely. I was too happy at a certain moment.
Yeah.
I was really too happy. I thought,
When we realized 12 minutes the time, we realized we go up.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have 4 minutes more.
Yeah.
Time is not the same at this depth than here.
You live in another world. What it does to your brain is amazing.
That's why we like it.
Yeah, it is.
The dive has been an incredible experience, a virtual trip back in time. And Dominique has the basis for a new painting.
Yeah. And here is a mast down. The other mast we couldn't see.
And I went in here, somewhere here.
Yeah, you went inside here.
Yeah.
And after we swim through.
But to swim through inside the wreck.
30 years ago, Bonaire really didn't have anything very special.
No.
And I feel very strongly about Bonaire. That's hard for me to say. But truly, no stupendous megafauna, no huge drop-offs, nothing that put Bonaire really outside of the normal. Move 30 years on and look at today, and Bonaire is all the way up there at the top.
But the tragedy is that we are, at this moment, we're open to all sorts of devastation from Trinidad, the Orinoco, and also around the corner, the Amazonia, that is washing into our sea and coming right down on our stream. And here we sit defenseless. You know, what we do on this island is wonderful, but we must reach out beyond. And we are reaching out beyond. We're making imprints all over the place, all over the world. And that's why I say that our fight is never finished.